This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. AJ Tarpoff, K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian, starts today's show by reminding cattle producers what should be in their calving kit to make sure they are prepared for calving season. Continuing the show is Jane Schuh, Director of K-State Research and Extension and Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Programs for the College of Agriculture, as she talks about agricultural research in 2023 and what she's excited for in the future. K-State horticulturist Ward Upham ends today's show by offering tips for determining whether old garden seed is still viable for use in the spring. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show discussing a few things that producers might want to think about when it comes to preparing for calving. And then to talk about it, we're joined by K-State Beef Veterinarian AJ Tarpoff. AJ, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to be on.
And so, AJ, as we're thinking about preparing for calving, kind of the first thing to get ready is all of your supplies you might need.
Absolutely. So for many of us, we may not have had to worry about calving since last year. Okay. So which is, after a long calving season, that's a welcomed thing. But maybe some of our supplies were not put away appropriately. Maybe we ran down some of our supplies last year. Now is the time to plan ahead. So I call it the checklist for your calving kit. Okay, before that first animal hits the ground, that first calving occurs for our spring calving herds. Let's reassess what we have, and that may be checking your facilities. If you have a calving facility in a barn or anything like that, is everything up to spec? Do you need to check any chains or grease anything? Making sure everything is well and good and functional. But then it's supplies, right? We have some usables that we may use. Lubricant. Okay, a good quality General OB lube comes in the big gallon jug. Make sure you have plenty on hand. Okay, we're trying to reduce stress right in the heat of calving. We don't want to increase stress not having the proper equipment. Have a good look at your calving chains. Okay, if they've rusted or have any sharp points, okay, you can retire those. Go buy a new set and have those prepared. So lube, chains, also tools for that newborn baby calf. Okay, check your any esophageal feeders if you're going to be tubing animals with colostrum. And again, colostrum. Some of our commercial products, it's a good idea to have one of those products or have a colostrum replacer product available for some of those first few animals that hit the ground. Okay, we never know what's going to happen. Sometimes we may have issues with the cow. Be prepared and have that conversation with your veterinarian. What colostrum they recommend, what they carry in stock, and maybe purchase some of those products prior to the calving season to make sure you have everything on hand. You're not racing around in the middle of the night trying to find stuff in the barn. You're not making a last-minute phone call to the veterinarian because, you don't have something. Plan now, plan ahead, have an assessment of what you have, replace and replenish or, clean up certain things. Simple things like halters. They may be tied in a knot and been left in the, corner of the barn. Get those out, dust them off, get everything prepared.
Also important to remember there that calving also takes place at night, so making sure there's lights available.
Absolutely. So headlamps. I just replaced the batteries out of my headlamps the other day and have some rechargeable ones too. And I had no idea that the rechargeable ones were dead and I needed new batteries. So having a headlamp, having gloves. Okay. I just replenished my own stock of OB sleeves and nitrile gloves. So I'm kind of prepared to myself and have everything loaded in my pickup, but it's a good idea to get started now. So headlamps, blankets, if you need towels, if you, have a good pail or a bucket that you're going to mix up some, warm water or anything in, making sure you have all that readily available and it's clean, it's prepared, you have everything ready to go.
And having all those pulling supplies is something hopefully producers don't have to use, but unfortunately, sometimes it comes down to it. And so could you talk to us a little bit about the calving process? Yeah,
the calving process. So this is Mother Nature's miracle. It truly is. The birthing process is an amazing thing. And it's what regenerates our herd. What's we keep the process going. We're producing beef, but it all starts with that birthing process. Now, the birthing process is a series of events, okay? And I like to break down the birthing process into 3 different stages of calving. And that first stage is the initiation. There's a lot that happens on the inside of the animal, but there's not as much of what they're showing us. Outside of that, what initiates that calving, outward appearances, we see some behavioral changes, right? Well, we've got a group of cows, maybe they're in a lot, we're feeding them, we're keeping a good eye on them, and all of a sudden we see some animals that maybe separate themselves from the herd. Maybe they don't want to come up for feed, the most aggressive feeders, and all of a sudden she's at the back of the pen and doesn't want to come up, or she's down in the trees and doesn't want to come up with the rest of the group. So we see slight behavioral changes that may say, hey, maybe I ought to go check her out and see what's going on. We could be in the initial stages of calving. Now, inside the animal, there's a lot more going on than just a little bit of behavioral change. We have a series of events that gets initiated from hormone release from the baby calf. It's amazing how the baby calf decides when it's going to be born. So if you want to blame anybody for the cow calving, in the middle of the night in a snowstorm, blame that baby calf, right? No, but really, it's hormones initiate a series of contraction, dilation, and relaxation, all in a very specific way to be able to turn and manipulate that calf into the birth canal and come into the outside world. Now, stage 1 of calving takes several hours, but then once the first fetal membranes come through and they break, that's the initiation of stage 2. That's our active calving stage. So when you see strings hanging out with a little bit of fluid that is broken, that's active calving, and that's where the cow herself, she'll lay down and she'll really squeeze, and you see her actively pushing. Her tail head comes up, she's pushing actively, and you'll also start seeing things come through the birth canal, the nose, the front feet, but it ends with hopefully a live newborn baby calf on the ground, and life is good, but always remember that she does have to pass the placenta, and that placenta is just the attachment to the womb.
So at what stage usually do you say, oh, that's when I need to possibly go pull that calf?
Yeah, that's my first rule of thumb that I always teach producers is during stage 2 of calving, where she's actively pushing. Okay, once stage 2 is initiated, when the water bag breaks, I say the rule of an hour. Okay, give her an hour. If she is not making adequate progress within an hour, there's a reason for it, and it probably needs to be investigated, and possibly an intervention needs to be done. So why a rule of an hour? Well, if it's a mature cow, she's done this several times. I mean, she should be able to. We have cows in our herds that lay down and push a couple times, and out comes a big old calf. Everything's happy-go-lucky in 20 minutes. I love those girls. But then we have think about our young heifers. Well, it can take them, physiologically, it can take them up to 2 hours to normally go through a calving process. But I break it down to the rule of an hour because I don't want her to get exhausted. So if you're out checking your cows, you see her, that water bag break come through, the first fetal membranes come through. We know she's in active calving. Give her time. Give her up to an hour. Make sure, we don't want to interfere, right? We don't want to cause any undue stress. Want her to do it on her own. But if it takes longer than an hour, there's a reason for it, and that's when we want to intervene.
And AJ, you mentioned a snowstorm, and so important to also remember to keep those calves warm.
Yeah, it sure is. Have supplies, everything in place on, cold, windy, wet, mud. All of those things can be disastrous to a newborn baby calf. So be prepared on both creating an environment that is protected from the wind, that is a good bedded environment where we have a thermal barrier from the ground. So we can deliver this newborn baby calf into a relative comfort area. Now, once that calf starts drinking and gets that first colostrum milk, it's packed full of energy. Like they're going to start regenerating and creating their own heat. But we just want them to, get off to a really good start. Now, if they do get chilled, have a plan in place to be able to warm those calves up, as quickly as possible. I always recommend in my calving kit, here's another one to consider, is throw in a thermometer. Okay, everybody has an old thermometer from COVID days, right? Throw that in your calving kit. Put it to good use this winter. Take a rectal temperature of those newborn baby calves if they're looking a little sluggish, looking a little cold, hunched up, and they just look like they're shivering. If their body temperature drops below 100 degrees, they may need a little bit of extra time, maybe in the floorboard of the pickup, or take them back home to get warmed up appropriately.
And if people have more questions about preparing for calving, because this is really just kind of a Cliff Notes version of it, are there some opportunities coming coming up for them?
There are some wonderful opportunities coming up. Every year, I conduct a series of calving schools throughout the state, and this year's no different. We've already done one in Hodgman County here in December. However, coming up in early January, I'm hitting the road. I've got a life-size cow and very, lifelike dummies that I go through the calving process. I talk about tools. I talk about techniques. I talk about time frames, when to call your veterinarian for help, right? And this is all about helping you have a better relationship with your vet, calling at an appropriate time so we can get more live calves on the ground. And, the calf prices are looking fantastic. So this is really meant to, whether you've been doing it for 50 years or brand new to the cattle business, this is to try to help you get more live calves out to that weaning process. So if you're interested in some of these these calving schools, check ksUbeef.org. That's our extension website. There'll be a list of all these schools. The first one is going to be on January 4th in St. John. The second one is going to be January 9th in Sublette. And then we're coming back east on January 11th. We'll be in Holton, followed by the 18th of January down in Howard. So those four were scattered all over the state. So if you're interested, contact those local extension offices. Again, all that information can be found on ksUbeef.org.
AJ, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
That was K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian AJ Tarpoff. Just a reminder on those upcoming calving schools. The first one is taking place January 4th in St. John, Kansas. The next one is January 9th in Sublette, Kansas. Following that is the 11th in Holton, and finally on the 18th, it's in Howard, Kansas. You can find more information about these schools by going to ksubeef.org. I'll also put a link to it in today's show notes on agtoday.net, so you can get registered for these events at the specific locations. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Thursday show discussing agricultural research here at K-State. And to talk about it, we're joined by the Director of Research for K-State Research and Extension and Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Programs in the College of Agriculture, Jane Schuh. Jane, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here again.
Jane, before we talk about some of the agricultural research that has been taking place, you've recently surpassed the 6-month mark here at Kansas State University. And how has it been going?
It's been going fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the people of the state. I've had a great opportunity to spend some time with folks out in western Kansas. Did that a little bit this summer for some field days. Had a wonderful time. It was nice and hot, which is right on for field days. Had some good opportunities to get to know some of our researchers on campus, and have just been so impressed with not only K-State, but the city of Manhattan and the state of Kansas.
So what has been some of that agricultural research that you've seen take place at K-State?
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I was just talking with someone about the collaboration that goes on. And on the ground, collaboration across the university, I think, is at an all-time high, and it's only going to get better. Both from the president's office, and he sees the value of research, and particularly, I think, a guy that comes from a research background and an agriculture background, he sees what that can do not only for the university, but also for the people that we serve all across the state. And this is an agricultural state, and we are serving all the people of the state. So that collaboration across agriculture, across vet medicine, across biology, across, our social sciences, our business folks, all the way across the university, and really looking at how what we do at K-State impacts people's lives.
And on the note of collaboration, K-State's done a lot of collaboration with other universities and programs outside of Kansas.
Yeah, not only outside of Kansas, but inside of Kansas, and maybe some of those areas that, the people down the road that you don't always talk about, that wear different colors than we do. I have pretty much had to purge all the blue and red in my closet, which is a little bit of a change, but I'm getting good on the purple. We do a lot of work, on that grassroots, one-on-one researchers finding each other, working together because it makes sense for them to do that. I was just talking to someone yesterday, as a matter of fact. One of our researchers who's working in pet food in Olathe was talking about some really neat research opportunities that she sees, and she's a relatively new faculty member. And I said, "Oh, do you know our ag economist who is working in pet food economics?" And she said, "No, she didn't." I said, "You guys would, you'd be able to really complement each other's work." So even within but across the state, some of our folks that work across the state in Hayes or in Colby or in Tribune, Garden City, we're working with our folks that are over on the eastern part of the state as well. So, I think that that's really fantastic. And then when you look outside the state, we were very fortunate this year in recruiting Darren Rudnick, who is a well-regarded water and irrigation specialist. But he's been working in Nebraska, and while we recruited him to K-State, and we're very happy to have him as part of the Wildcat team, he comes with a network of people that he has worked with in Nebraska, and many of the same sorts of issues that they deal with in irrigation research are the same things that we're dealing with, the same things that Oklahoma is dealing with, the same things that Colorado might be dealing with. So bringing all of those networks together is just better for everyone.
And those networks coming together have generated quite a bit of funding in the millions for K-State and all of this work that's being done.
Yep, and while the end of the fiscal year for the university, those numbers get crunched for several months, and I don't think they're quite ready to roll out what happened for last year yet. It has been a good year for research, and some of our faculty members, I'm stunned by how the light is on in their eyes, and they're always looking for that next thing that's going to help the people that do the agriculture and feed the world. And it's neat to be a part of that team. It's been a good year.
And since you have been here, what have been some big or really interesting research projects that you've seen take place?
Well, one of the big ones, and you've probably heard about this quite a bit already, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, really protecting and looking at natural resources. So in agriculture, everything comes from the soil. So soil health is huge, but also, and this is in so many different aspects, the new Water Institute that's, for the whole state of Kansas, that's bringing in, folks in at KU and folks in the state, folks in the Department of Water, across the entire state to work on using the resources that we have, the people, the networks that we have to look at water in all the different ways that we're going to need to. Because it's not going to be one silver bullet that's going to fix the needs that we have. It's all the way from people that are looking at how do we put just the right amount of water where we want it, when we want it, how do we get water that we don't want, out of our fields, how do we make sure that the quality of water that we have in our municipal cities is good, high quality to drinking water as well. I think other kind of areas that I'm really excited about is value-added agriculture, and particularly in food. And whether we're talking about human food, plant and animal, so dairy is coming online, and that's a great and growing area. The opportunity for K-State with some of their new facilities to really be responsive to folks in animal agriculture, folks in plant agriculture as well, in some of those facilities being at a level that the students that are coming through and that we're training are going to be really useful as they get out into industry as well. But looking at things like pet food, for example, we've got a wonderful opportunity with this corridor of animal health and plant health as well, and what we can contribute as value added to our state, and looking at how that can really boost the economy as well, instead of just dealing with commodities, to be able to use those commodities in ways that add value in our state and add value to the producer as well.
And teaching something really important to K-State Research and Extension. So how are you seeing those researchers share their knowledge and all of this work they've put into these topics?
That is one of the things that I love most about working at a research university is we are teaching and training the next generation. So whether it's an undergraduate student student who has that opportunity to work, as an hourly hire in a research lab or do a study abroad where they understand kind of the markets of a different country and where we might be selling our Kansas wheat abroad, or our graduate students. And one of the hats that I wear is the coordinator for graduate programs in the college. And looking at those master's students and those PhD students as they go out, and they're really the people who are going to help extend the knowledge that we have today till tomorrow. So we are doing a really good job of mentoring those students as well.
And thinking of looking ahead, what are you excited for 2024?
I am very excited for where we're going with some of our new facilities and how that will allow us to better help and train the new generation of agriculturalists in the state, but also what that looks like as far as collaboration within Kansas State University, bringing in kind of an umbrella of collaboration. And I think in agriculture, we do that inherently really well anyway. We've got Ag Econ that's talking about what's the impact of what we do in swine nutrition and what we do in pet food and what we do in plant biosecurity, for example. But all of those aspects really need to work together. You need water to grow the feed that you feed your animals that, wind up to be good, safe food for human consumption. It all works together, and I don't think there's a better place to do that than a research university and a land grant like K-State.
Jane, if people or producers would like to find maybe more information or try to keep up to date with the loads of research that are taking place at K-State and the College of Agriculture, what's your recommendation for doing that?
Well, one of the neatest things about a land grant, and a land grant that's in the state of Kansas, is you don't have to go very far before you will find your local extension agent. And those extension agents, that network is, I would say, the hidden gem, but I don't think in Kansas it is a hidden gem because people recognize how valuable that relationship with the communities where our extension folks are embedded. And Dean Minton was just talking the other day about the fact that it was quite a while ago, but Kansas State University decided that they were going to forever marry research and extension, and that marriage is strong. That extension value that we have as K-State is growing even bigger, and certainly our president sees the value of extension and is saying, you know what, that spirit of extension goes through every single thing that we do, whether you're in English or in agronomy. But certainly our ag folks know that and love that, and that network is something that's baked into our DNA in agriculture. So find your extension people, find your researchers. We are here to serve the people of this state, and I think we do a really good job doing that.
Jane, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us 2023 agricultural research, but then also what 2024 could look like.
More stuff coming, even better than last year, I think.
That is fantastic. That was Director of Research for K-State Research and Extension and Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Programs in the College of Agriculture, Jane Schuh. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be back with more ahead.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. As gardeners consider their seed selections for the coming growing season, K-State horticulturist Ward Upham says they might be able to save some money by using seed bought in previous years. However, he says that seed must still be viable. Ward, I would imagine that the garden seed catalogs have probably already arrived in people's mailboxes and they're starting to kind of look through those, and it's a good time to do that, actually.
Actually, we've received several of the garden catalogs already. There's going to be more coming, of course, but it's surprising. Seems like they come earlier every year.
And I guess the thing we're thinking about now is how much seed do I maybe have from the previous growing season?
That's right. Some people don't realize you can keep seed from one year to the next. And for most of our garden seeds, they'll last about 3 years if a storage situation is cool, dark, dry, and, you can have enough area that you can store them that way.
So that's really the key, though, is making sure that they have been stored properly?
That's it. And there are some exceptions to that rule. For example, members of the carrot family, such as carrots, parsnips, and parsley, they're usually only good for 1 to 2 years, and so you have to watch them a little bit closer.
So in terms of viability, is there any difference?
Yeah, there's some difference. And so if you're unsure of the viability, for example, if it's getting where you consider it may be too old, you can actually do a test to see what your germination percentage is. And relatively simple. Just put a paper towel that's been moistened and put 10 seeds on it, and then cover it with another moist paper towel. And then put that in a plastic bag. Just leave it cracked open so it can get a little bit of air movement. And then put it in a warm place. A lot of people just put it on top of the fridge.
So no soil needed for this. This is just simply a wet paper towel.
That's it. All you're doing is seeing if that seed will germinate. So once you set it up there, leave it for a week, and then take out any germinated seed to keep track of how many did actually sprout. And then leave it for another week, do the same thing, and then that will give you the percent germination. So once you have that, you can decide whether it's able to keep or whether it's better just to replace that seed. If it's a little bit low, you can just sow a little bit more heavily, and that'll take care of the problem.
So if you're starting with 10, how many do you need for it to be viable?
I would like to have 80%, but you can go a little bit lower than that and just seed a little bit heavier, and that'll take care of it.
So this is a fairly easy process and doesn't take a lot of time.
It doesn't, and so that's an easy way. You're assuming you have enough seed to make it worthwhile. But if you've ordered a lot of seed and then you just want to check germination, that's one of the ways you can do it. There are other things you can do as well, though. If you look at packets, a lot of them nowadays, there may be 20 seeds per packet. And so if you have friends or neighbors or a garden club, you can actually put together a larger order and then split it once you get the seed in. And that will reduce the price per seed by quite a bit.
I guess the other thing is making sure that you're getting those seeds ordered early.
That's right. You want to make sure that they haven't run out of the varieties that you want. Other thing to do is when you get in those packets, put the date on it or put the year on it so you know how old that seed is, because it's easy to get them all mixed up. Sometimes seed packets will have the date that they were packaged, but sometimes they don't. So it's a good idea to put the date that they were received so you have an idea of actually when you got those in.
How early do you suggest people order then?
I would order as soon as you can. And so it depends on when those catalogs come in or whether you're able to order online earlier. I usually order in probably the first half of January is when I get mine done.
And if somebody is wanting to try something new, can they do some research and find out whether or not that's really going to work in Kansas?
Yeah, we have suggested varieties, but also talk to neighbors and talk to garden center personnel. They'll usually have a good idea of what has worked for them. And so that's a good way to start, but don't be afraid to try some new things that have caught your eye. Just don't put everything in new. Put in something that you know is tried and true as well as something that's new.
We typically have our favorites, and those are probably the go-to to begin with.
Yes, and some of those varieties are really old. For example, Jet Star tomatoes has been around for years and years and years, and it's still a very good variety.
Good opportunity to check what you have, but then also be thinking ahead for new seed.
That's right. And so that's a good thing to do this time of year when there's not much else you can do as far as gardening is concerned.
That's K-State horticulturist Ward Upham with information on using old garden seed and purchasing new seed. More information can also be found at county and district extension offices. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.